Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast. I feel really sorry for anyone who clicked on this thinking they found a new way to escape us, Liam, because we just simply changed our name. Aren't we clever? And what's better is those on YouTube can see us as well. We've come back to YouTube.
Hello. We are back. We're back on the tubes. Not just this either, Jesse, not just the podcast proper, but we're going to be branching out and doing a bit more content. But before we get to telling people about that, we've got, not just change the name. We've got a new handle, Jesse. Where can people find us?
Well, you have to do a little bit of hunter-gathering this time. None of this easy, dodgy punt stuff to find us. On Instagram and YouTube, it's at CMPerfectAFL, of course, Centimetre Perfect. And Spotify, Amazon, Apple, it's Centimetre Perfect and AFL Podcast. Much easier to find if you know what the name of the show is. Liam, why have we called it Centimetre Perfect? Because last time I checked, this was the Dodgy Punts AFL podcast, but no more.
No more. So because we're going in a bit of a new direction, we thought, it's a good time to maybe spruce things up a little bit. Dodgy Punts, it really wasn't giving us the name that we kind of wanted. We chose it because we thought it was funny when this was just a bit of a hobby. But now that we're going to be starting to branch out into new and different things, we thought we need a brand new name. And what better name and what better way to pay homage to one of WA's greats, Dennis Cometti. I'm assuming he's from WA because I saw him down in my house at North Fremantle one time. So he's WA's now. Yes. Trust your gut. Trust it when you see a person in your home suburb. He's probably from there. One of his great calls, Centimetre Perfect, comes straight from that. We've lifted it. We've borrowed it. We've stolen it. And we've also stolen this podcast.
No, we haven't stolen it. We're not allowed to. We're not legally. Legally, nothing is stolen. It is reappropriated.
Realistically, has he trademarked the word Centimetre Perfect?
I really hope not. We probably should have checked.
It's fine. I mean, there are other podcasts out there called Centimetre Perfect. They're all spelt wrong, which is great. So we've kind of taken the correct spelling for that. But yeah, new brand, new name, new start, new beginnings. Season's not done yet, but we thought what better way to start than coming into the final season. Jesse.
We kind of Bradbury'd the name, didn't we? Because it's a good name, and everyone who's tried to take it spelt it wrong or hasn't been around in years. So I'm quite happy with that. I think we've done pretty well. But Liam, you've teased a couple of times about a new direction. Now, we don't want to give too much away, obviously. We want to keep our cards fairly close to our chest, a la Ross Lyon in the 2011 off-season. But what are we planning? What are we plotting in the Centimetre Perfect sphere?
We're going to start to branch out from just the podcast side of things. We're going to start doing some little YouTube videos as my mic goes crazy. Some YouTube videos about some things from history, some trivia, some ranks, all this, a whole bunch of fun stuff. You've got ideas out the wazoo. Plenty of stuff that I bet you didn't know about. I think we want to try and capture that part of the AFL market because anyone can do goal celebration, highlight packages, talking about games, pish posh. I mean, we'll do that too. But we're going to try and cover parts of this game that A, you may not have known about, and B, are just really interesting and intriguing. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a bit of work, but we're up for the challenge. It's going to be great. What do you got to say about it, Jesse?
The best part about Australian rules is it's really weird. And when you have a sport that's really weird, it has a really weird history. And even just doing some preliminary checks for the spreadsheet for ideas for the show, and yes, that exists, there's been some absolute belters of stories that I can't wait to tell. Stories I think are relatively unknown, stories that should be more well-known but aren't at all. And I think a couple of the old classics that are just worth looking at in a bit of a different lens as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. But in saying all of that, and that is saying a lot because it's a complete almost rebuild a la Richmond, who we'll talk about later.
We will.
We still have a final series to get through. And we're getting closer. And I'm pretty sure if Centimetre Perfect isn't trademarked, the most even final series in modern history post BC has been trademarked by the AFL because, it's being pushed. And, I mean, on one hand, every final series is mostly even. That's how finals work. But also, is this the most even final series we've ever seen? Can any of the 8 teams win the premiership this year?
I actually think, you're the history guy. You're the history buff. In my memory, which granted is not expansive, this is one of the closest ones that I can think of in some time, only because the season itself was so delightfully close, so painfully close as well. But, you look at the top 8, and we'll go through the ladder in just a second, but I actually think that, this could be one of the most up in the air seasons and final series that we've had in some time, if not ever. So I can see why the AFL are pushing that narrative. Absolutely. What do you reckon, Jesse? Do you know something I do not know?
I think I broadly agree. I look at seasons like 97, 98. They were pretty even going into finals. Even looking back in terms of the top tier of talent to kind of 2004 when Brisbane were on the way down, Port Adelaide were about to claim theirs. St Kilda were right there as well. So you have seasons of microcosms of teams. Mm-hmm. Even 06, if you look at the top four there, Adelaide, West Coast, Fremantle, Sydney, any four of those could have won the premiership that year, and they were the four in the prelim final. So I get the sense that, yes, it is a close final series, or yes, been a close season. Yes, it should be a close final series. But I just have a feeling we're going to see at least one absolute belting this final series, much like the 22 grand final where one team just doesn't turn up.
Yeah, it's bound to happen, and you can hear all about that when Jesse and I do our tips in the Just the Tips episode. We're keeping that name because it's funny, and it makes sense. People know how to find that easily. Just the Tips, that'll be on YouTube because we are pushing our little tipping competition into September, into the final series. Even though I've already won. Honestly, though, Jesse, like this round of finals, if I don't catch a couple on you, it's done anyway. So it is what it is. It's just a bit of fun, isn't it? Bit of banter. But let's move on to the no games to talk about this week, but there is still plenty to talk about. So we are going to look back. We're going to go on a bit of a walk back into the past, Jesse, back in time, which I know you're really excited to do, because way back at the start of this year, it feels like yesterday, Jesse, when we started this thing, but one of our very first episodes, we did our ladder predictor for the year. Now, I have those ladders on the screen here. Jesse was very hesitant to talk about these today, and like I said to him, everyone knows what we've said anyway. It's already out there. And two, I think this actually speaks to the crazy season that's been and the close season that's been, where some of these teams finished. One of yours.
Can I just make a point before we go on?
Go for it, Jesse.
Because even though you're about to see me be wrong on many occasions, I still won Just the Tips this year. Liam, continue.
Okay, fine. Even though you agreed to take it to the finals, pretty sure it was your idea because you were behind at the time. But now that you're winning, this does make sense, though. You are a young man. And, just I've got to make sure that your masculinity is intact, apparently.
Does that make... do with that. I like winning.
Well, sure. Well, then make sure you win the tips. Oh, God. Here we go. But new direction of Centimetre Perfect. We're just going to bicker the entire time, apparently. Just from start to finish. Man, stuff you, Jesse. Competition's still going. I still have a chance.
That was really uncalled for, actually. Quite aggressive. I think you should stand.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'll stand. But now we are going to talk about how Jesse was wrong quite a lot. And also myself, to be fair, when we go through the ladder, how it finished up for the year 2024 and how we predicted it would go way back at the start of the season. Jesse, as is tradition, from the top to the bottom this time, because we're going to talk about the bottom four in a little bit. From the top to the bottom, how did this season finish up?
Badly, if you're a Fremantle supporter. In first place is Sydney with 68 points. Second, Port Adelaide with 64. Geelong in third with 60, joined by GWS, however, with a superior percentage for the former. Fifth was Brisbane in 58. Sixth was the Bulldogs on 56, a number shared by the Hawks. However, again, Bulldogs with the superior percentage. We'll see how much that matters in a qualifying final. Eighth place was Carlton, who had the better of Collingwood's percentage on 52 points apiece. 10th is Fremantle. Just want to remind you, they were third a month ago. Essendon in 11th with 46. A three-way tie for 44 points. St Kilda up into 12th, heading off Gold Coast and Melbourne. Four teams we will come to talk about in our season reviews today. The greatest 15th place team of all time, the Adelaide Football Club, on 34. A Grand Canyon to West Coast in 16th with 20. A bit of we'll call it like a Victoria Falls, wouldn't go as far as Niagara, for 16th, 17th, North Melbourne with 12. And Richmond chasing everyone with their 8 points, a paltry 2 wins to go with their 21 losses in season 2024.
That's right. So that brings us to where we thought it would all be, when it began, where we thought it would all end. Now, Jesse, would you like me to go first and tell the lovely people how I saw the year, and then you can tear it apart, and then we'll do the same thing, but vice versa?
No, because I'd rather have the last crack. So I'll cop it first. I'll hear what you have to say about mine, and then that will dictate how nasty I am about you putting Gold Coast in the top 8.
Okay. I'll be the bigger man at both figuratively and literally. So let's go from the top. So I'm doing mine first, right? Okay. So here's how I... All right.
This isn't confidence points. You can't just change the rules of the tipping competition halfway through, which, by the way, I still won. That was your concept.
We'll talk about confidence points in the tips later on, Jesse. You're so caught up on it. It's okay, mate. It's okay.
Just
we'll let everyone know. I'm trying to with the finals. Move on. I know you're trying to avoid telling everyone what your ladder was from the start of the year.
That's all we have time for on the Sentiment
But you must. You simply must tell everybody.
All right. Who was first on mine?
Okay, so up the top, you had the Collingwood Magpies going back to back, or at the top of the ladder anyway. Then you had the Blues. Then you had the Power, so Power's okay. Then you had the Lions, so in and about. And then the Swans, Crows, Demons, and Tigers rounding out your top 8. Okay, and then your bottom 10, you had the Giants, the Saints, the Hawks, Bulldogs, Cats, Bombers, Eagles, Suns, and yes, everybody, this is where he put Freo at the start of the year. 17th for Freo, and then finishing up at the bottom with the Kangas. So,
can I ask you something? Because you wanted to have a little go there, so I'll get in early.
What was the go? Is that where you put them or not?
Yes, it is. But I have a question for you.
Factual.
It's anywhere from 9th to 18th. You could put them wherever. You're either in finals or you're not. So where I put them is irrelevant. They still failed this season by not making finals.
So I think what you're doing here, Jesse, is you're trying to skirt around the fact that you had them coming second last. Because I think there is a massive difference between putting someone in second last and putting them in, where do I have them? 14th, right? So is your point valid? That doesn't matter? Sure. But if you put someone finishing second last as opposed to 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, that's saying a lot about where you thought the form was going to be. And that's okay. Like you've said before, even if you're wrong, you'll admit to when you're wrong, Jesse, and you'll back yourself up because at the time that was the information you had. So why has it changed now? Why are you getting all uppity about it now?
Well, just because of your tone, to be quite frank with you then. I don't care, I got it wrong. But I won't take your tone when it comes to accusing me of being wrong. I'll be wrong on my own time, not on yours.
Fair enough.
But no, I will talk through my ladder because there was a fair bit of moving and shaking this season.
Yes.
First of all, Richmond went from having a 7-6 finish under Andrew McCalter to winning 2 games all year. That's really fun. Love that for me, having them in the top 8. North Melbourne, that's about where I had them to be. West Coast, that's about where I had them to be. Adelaide, huge underperformers. Now, I'm giving myself half a point because I did have Melbourne massively sliding.
You did.
So I'm saying that I'm getting half a point because even I was about 10 spots off.
Is 7th a massive slide?
Given they were consensus top 4 for a lot of people going into the top of the season, I would say so.
Fair enough.
Gold Coast, I mean, not that hard to predict them not making finals. Pat in the back, move on. St Kilda, I actually had St Kilda higher than they finished, which is quite funny looking back.
Yeah,
but
for you, yeah.
I think two spots off, I'll take that. And I think in many ways they underachieved this year. So I think that's a reasonable assertion. Essendon, I had Essendon a bit lower than that, didn't I? About 14th? 13th for Essendon?
16. I have to count up from the bottom because I'm a dolt like that. 18, 7, 16, 15, 14th. You're in the 14th.
I mean, I think that's about reflective. If you look at the way they finished the season, I think 14th would probably be about justified.
Yeah.
Fremantle, we've already talked about. I don't think anybody saw Collingwood coming, or certainly if you did have Collingwood finishing outside the top 8, well done, because I didn't see that level of. I mean, there was issues, there was injury issues that plagued them, but I certainly don't think anyone quite saw them falling off quite like that.
There would have been about a 5% error rate of Carlton supporters who thought Collingwood might not make the finals this year. I think everyone else would have thought that they would have been up there for sure.
And this is where the things get weird. Carlton massively underperformed this year for me.
Hugely.
I can see them copping a belting at the Gabba this week. And to me, they would be up there for one of the biggest disappointments of this year. On paper, to what they've delivered, they have underperformed, especially from where they were 2/3 of the way in the season.
They were 20 points off not making it at all. So, I mean, obviously a bunch of other things as well, but all things considered on the last day, they were very, very close to not making this at all, which would have been an absolute failure. An absolute failure.
I'm allocating myself half a point for Hawthorn because I did have them going better than a lot of people expected this season. But even I couldn't have had them in the finals. They have done very well. Good on them. Very happy for them. The Dogs seem to be, and probably put Hawthorn in this as well, to be fair, the Dogs seem to be the benefactors of other teams falling apart faster than they have as a list. And they've kept 70% of their list profile, whereas Melbourne has kept 40% of the list profile. And that's a massive difference in the context of a tight season. So well done to the Dogs, well done to Luke Beveridge. He's done well to keep the group going because there was hounds at the door, pardon the pun, halfway through the season for his job. So to turn them around, get All-Australian defender Rory Lobb in there as well, I think it's worked. And the Dogs are looking good. They've also got the best young player in the competition in Sam Darcy.
I think it's crazy to think about that because we forget that like halfway through this season, I'm pretty sure in our buy episodes that this was where the Dogs were at. Dogs were at Bevo getting the whole hook around I went the wrong way there. The hook around the neck and being dragged off stage left. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, what a turnaround they've had. But I do agree with you in the sense that, is it the fact that they've improved greatly or is it the fact that all the other crazy stuff happening around them? Obviously, you've got to take your chances when it comes to winning games of football. But yeah, it's exciting if you're a Bulldogs fan, but it'll be intriguing to see how it goes moving into 2025.
Now, what's funny for me is, and you probably won't remember this, but I remember this quite well because we actually, at the time, we shared our ladders with each other before we recorded. And it was either the first episode or the second episode that we did, but we actually, we showed each other our ladders before we recorded. And I made a very late change in that recording. I pretty much made it on the fly. Yeah. I got cold feet before we started recording. And you actually mocked me for where I originally had them because I originally had Brisbane in 5th. And then I turned on Melbourne and dumped them to 7th, which promoted Brisbane to 4th. Now, had I not done that, I would have looked really silly for putting Melbourne in 4th, but I would have gotten the Brisbane one spot on. So I'm giving myself 4/5 of a point for getting Brisbane there.
I love how you just started allocating points for this. Like, are you tallying your points? Because I haven't done points for mine.
No, I'm not.
I can make up arbitrary points as well. All right, there you go. I mean, Brisbane. I don't know why I would have mocked you for Brisbane though, because I had them in the same kind of area. Unless I was mocking you for having them 7th, and that's why you changed it.
No, you're mocking me for having them in 5th. They're going to make top 4, and they didn't. That was
a really good impression of me, Jesse. I'm very well impressed. Well done.
Thanks. GWS, I'm happy to admit I was wrong on GWS. I wasn't sure where they were at the end of last season. I thought they were potentially missing some pieces. I didn't see Coleman medalist Jesse Hogan storming through the competition the way he has, so potentially that was the piece they were missing. They could win the premiership this year. I didn't have them making finals, so I really hope they don't. Geelong in 3rd. Well, look at you go, Geelong. Good on you. Please stop being really good.
I know.
I'd like to have someone else to get a go.
God, they're annoying.
They're good though. They're a good, well-organised football club.
That's why they're annoying. Because every time you would predict them to slip, like I do, we'll get to my ladder in a second. But every time we predict them to slip, what's that? Double chance? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. We got this. We had Geelong, the greatest team of all. It's that family mentality, Jesse.
I'm never putting Geelong lower than 6 in the ladder ever again, even if they win like one game the year before. It would happen.
No.
But to be fair, when we were coming into the season, did many have Geelong certainly top 4? I think maybe there would have been a smattering that would have put them in the 8, but they weren't particularly impressive in 23, I didn't feel.
No, and I think everyone was thinking like the new kids coming through, some of the older guard letting them down a little bit. But then the problem with Geelong is that they're really good at managing that list. So all those young kids who were getting blooded in the bad year last year came in this year and absolutely killed it, and are still have the potential to kill it further.
And they got a rising star out of it too.
They did. It's good for them, I suppose. I was about to say, old mate from Western Bulldogs, but he got suspended, didn't he? Same week as Harley Reid. That's right.
That was a weird week.
It was a weird week because everyone was like, "Oh, No, we shouldn't have to do no suspensions for Rising Stars.
Congratulations, Rising Star Tom Emmett. Everyone else is suspended. And then he got suspended, so they had to give it to me. Port Adelaide in second. I think that's a fair reflection of where they are. I had them in third, I believe. Liam, happy if you to fact check that for me. But
You did.
they're a top 4 side. I put them in the top 4. It's like a little putt for par. Sydney are weird because I actually, even though I've gotten about 5 places wrong, I still don't feel like they've played like a dominant top side. And potentially, I mean, if you extrapolate some of their form, they've played like a top side, and they've also lost to second on ladder by 112 points, which is nigh on unprecedented in VFL AFL history. You're not going to see that many times.
No, and I think this is why it's been such a weird season, because the team who's on top, and why there's that talk of the final series being so close, is because Sydney could very well easily just get absolutely destroyed by GWS on the weekend. Absolutely,
I don't think Sydney win the premiership. I don't think Sydney will win the premiers this year.
No, and it's hard to say they would be based on the form that they had in the second half of the year. Obviously, first half was stellar, but then after the bye, it seems like it just kind of went into a bit of a free fall after Freo broke their spirits. If we have anything to rest this season on, Jesse, it's that time we broke Sydney's spirits by a point.
That's such a Fremantle thing to say.
Yeah, I know.
That is such a Fremantle thing to say. Let's do your ladder, and then I want to quickly talk about the top 8 and who we think is the best chance to win the flag this year if we had to call it now.
Okay, cool. So we won't spend too much time on mine because we've spoken a lot about it with yours, but here's what it was. I had Blues as minor premiers, Magpies, Lions and Swans in the top 4, Power, Crows, Giants and the Suns rounding out the 8, and then my bottom 10, I had the Demons, the Hawks, Tigers, Saints, Dockers, Cats all the way down there, Bulldogs all the way down there, Bombers, Eagles and Kangas to round it out. So I think, I mean, what do you want to pick apart, Jesse? What do you want to have a go at? Go
on. On balance, I actually think your ladder is probably slightly better than mine. So well done.
Thank you.
I think, but at the same time, we've both had some absolute howlers in there.
Well, we did. Like, I think my biggest howler is probably the Cats and the Bulldogs, obviously. Oh, no, sorry. Suns in the 8. That's probably my biggest howler.
But I had Richmond in the 8, so mine's objectively worse.
That's true. But I think this is the thing. Like, looking at the start of the season, like, I had good feelings, and we spoke about this at length at the start. Like, I have a lot of vibes in my picks. Not so much stats, not so much who's playing or who's injured or who's come in or who's come out. Meh. I just like, you know what? I feel like it's going to be a good year for the Suns. And at home, for most part, it was. They just couldn't do anything away. And I mean, they ended up finishing, what's that, 15th, 14th? 13th. So probably, obviously, about right. But God, it's going to happen for them at some stage, surely. And I thought that was this year, and it wasn't, and that's fine. Hawks again. I said they were going to rise, which is good. Again, couldn't have predicted how far they would go. Bulldogs, obviously, I thought they were going to slide big time based on last year. Proved me wrong. And yeah, Crows, disappointing. But I think for the most part, I mean, outside of the Magpies, but again, I think, yeah, it's pretty.
What I find quite interesting is our ladder predictions are wrong, but a lot of the rationale was right. And that is we had a lot of teams detonating and bottoming out this year. And that only happened to Richmond, to Adelaide, and to Melbourne, really. Like, we had Essendon detonating, we had the Dogs detonating, we had Geelong detonating. Those 3 avoided detonation, 2 of which are playing finals. It goes to show how you just need a run and a bit of quality. The season ladders, and I think Geelong, Dogs, Bombers are all coached by top 8 coaches in this competition, or certainly top 10 coaches. Yeah. And although their lists are probably lacking, I would say, compared to some teams that we had finishing below them, they were able to steady the ship and get through that period. So will we have Geelong in 14th next year? Probably not. I'm too scared to do that. We'll have Essendon in 17th next year? Probably. Before we move on to our season review for the bottom 4, I want to I want to stop this in time and I want to clip this for our Instagram.
Okay, this next part that's coming up.
This next part that's coming up.
Okay.
You have to pick it. I have to pick it.
Okay.
Who's winning the premiership this year?
Jesus, I'm going to say the Power.
Okay.
The Power. Yeah. Based on nothing. Good form coming into the finals. Good vibes. Good color. That's nice. Song's all right. What about you,
Song's
Jesse?
pretty good.
Yeah.
Geelong. Power's my second choice, which means that the first qualifying final between these two sides will be replayed in a month's time.
As long as Trevor doesn't come out and do a bow, it should be fine.
I'm sure it will be fine. But this is the game that I want to see in the end of September. I think this is the game that is going to be a great grand final for Port. I mean, it's written in the stars, isn't it? It's a shot at redemption for 2007. It's almost the antithesis of that. You've got the experienced Steely Geelong versus the young upstart Port, which is the opposite roles that were faced in 07 with that veteran Port list taking on this exciting young Geelong brand under Bomber Thompson. So that's the grand final I want to say. That's the grand final I think we're going to get. GWS would be the only spanner in the works for me. I don't see any of the bottom four getting a prelim win. They may very well get to a prelim, but I don't think we'll see Brisbane, Dogs or Hawks, which are the three teams that I think can get to a prelim at all, go and win that again.
The final we all want to see is Bulldogs versus Hawks, but we're going to not get that because they play each other in the first week of the finals. C'est la vie. C'est la vie. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be an exciting September, that is for sure. We're watching all the games for you, so you don't have to, but you probably will. But come and listen to us anyway. Jesse, let's move on to the bottom four, which you're calling, what's this segment called now?
The Battlers for these four.
The Battlers.
Not Josh Battle, the Battlers.
No. So we're going to go through and we're going to give them a mark out of 10. Where is Josh Battle going? Has he gone to Hawthorn yet?
Hawthorn. They can't sign him before the elimination final. That would be very funny, though. That
is true. I'm just have a swig before we get to this one.
Well, while you swig, I'll talk about Richmond, who are at 18th place on the ladder and had a season that could only be described as dreadful. Liam, tell me a bit about Richmond.
Well, we've got the following retirements coming out of this year. Dylan Grimes, Dustin Martin, Marlian Pickett, Sam Naismith. And potential on the way out, so you've got Shai Bolton, Liam Baker, and Daniel Rioli. Potentially more. Jack Graham. Anyone else?
The canteen lady.
The canteen lady. It's going to be a rough couple of years, I think, for Richmond.
Secure to have the war chest. That's all I'm saying. Reza Park's only down the road.
St Kilda Tigers, you reckon just do it? Just make just buy them out entirely?
Send the canteen lady there.
That's true. She makes a
600K over 4.
Potato salad does the canteen lady. She's really good at it, I've heard, through the grapevine. I'll put her on the list as well for the notes. Canteen lady. All right, so Jess, we're going to give him a mark out of 10. Tell us what you think.
Even though they finished last, I'm not giving them a 1 out of 10 because I actually saw enough out of it. I'll give them a 3 out of 10.
Oh, as high as 3.
As high as 3, and I'll explain why. It is very clear that Richmond decided early on this season, oh no, we're really bad, and actually started making the calls to blood the young talent and get on with things. And despite that, and despite a horrendous win-loss record, they were competitive in about 14 of their 23 games this season. They didn't have many blowouts. They were solid on numerous occasions, and we talk about Adelaide being the greatest 15th place team of all time. I think last year's North and West Coast sides were infinitesimally worse than this Richmond side were in 2024. I think there's pieces to this team, but I think they need to go further than what they're currently doing. We talk about Dusty retiring. We talk about Dylan Grimes retiring. We talk about the trades for Bolton, for Rioli, for Graham, for company. We see a very clear directive to fix the list. To me, there's 2 more bits they need to sort out properly. Tom Lynch and Darren Prestia. No fault of their own, and excellent players on their day. But these guys are in a really awkward spot where their bodies aren't right. They're not particularly valuable trade-wise. And that leaves Richmond in a bit of a booby trap when it comes to their contracts. You could almost make the case of throwing Hopper and Taranto in this bracket too, minus the injuries, because they have had relatively poor seasons, Taranto especially. So this leaves Richmond in a really precarious position. One they're going to need to draft their way out of because they don't have the trade capital, assuming Baker, Bolton, Rioli all go. What that leaves them with is a promising young coach, a swag of draft picks to take into November, and some pieces around a well-organised, powerful football club in Victoria. I'm far more excited about Richmond's next 5 years than I'm about Essendon's, than I'm about Melbourne's. Because they're doing this rebuild right. They're not doing this 13th place, never-ending warp that we've seen some of the big Victorian clubs get themselves into. Richmond in the 21st century have either been dreadful or dynastic. Right now, they're dreadful. I don't necessarily think that's going to be forever.
Fair shout. Fair shout indeed. And this is why I let you go first. Because like you have all the actual the good information, and then I just come around and I say this. I gave him 2 out of 10, only just based on the scale. It's only to 10, and they're at the bottom of the ladder, so I've got to start from the bottom.
That's fair. I'm
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to give myself some wiggle room. But yeah, it's hard to give him more than a 2 this year, unfortunately. It was plagued by injuries, correct. Pretty rough for Adam Uze's first year in charge, but I think it kind of showed that like you said, their depth is non-existent. So I think I saw a kind of if all those trades go to plan, this includes Baker going to Freo, which I don't think will happen. But if that was to happen, they would have like 6 or 7 drafts in the first 20. And that's enough to build a very, very solid young team.
And a Gringotts Bank level of cap space too, to take into 2025 and beyond.
So you could also bring someone in, maybe do something with that. Who knows? So exciting times, but for this year, definitely a 2 out of 10. Like you said, they battled manfully for a lot of the year without getting the results, which is fine. At least they did that. Unlike some of the other teams we might be about to talk about. I wouldn't say it's a year to forget for the Tigers. I think it's going to be a very formative year. I think they'll learn a lot from it as a culture as well as a fan base. As a team that has had a lot of success and also has been down the bottom, they're on that roller coaster. It's a very different roller coaster to us Freo fans, which is kind of just like, and then it just kind of just goes like this.
No, we're the teacup ride.
We are the teacup.
Forever going in circles.
Oh, God, that's so apt. That's so true. Oh, dear. But yeah, I think looking ahead to 2025, actually, Jesse, I'll throw this to you. One word for your 2025 for Richmond.
Better.
Okay.
Yours?
The word I chose dire. And the reason I chose dire is because I don't think it's going to be
a club legend.
Jack Dyer?
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't actually know his first name, but I figured there's like 50,000 Jacks in the AFL, so it's got to be Jack. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's going to be Dyer only because I think it's going to be a build. It's not going to happen next year. It's going to be another rough one for them, but we will move on to the team that finished second to last this year, the North Melbourne Skippies, the Kangaroos. Retirements, Hugh Greenwood, sure, and Liam Shields, who has had a long and very decorated career. I believe he was part of Hawthorn for all those years, wasn't he? Good on him. Great name too. Solid name.
And Shields. A solid player too.
Yes.
Underappreciated for his role in those Clarko era teams.
He's one of those players where you're like, wait, he was playing when? How long ago? He's still playing now? Good on him. Keeping it going. Delisted / erased Taron Thomas. So we'll move on to your thoughts about the North Melbourne Kangaroos and your score for them, Jesse.
I tossed up between 2 and 3 for North. I went with 3 because I think, like Richmond, in a season of 2024 it's not always based on the win-loss record when it comes to grading teams, which on one hand is stupid because it comes to where they finish. But on the other hand, I think it's really important to contextualise the losses that North Melbourne had. They were competitive manfully in a lot of games this season. They had some absolute bottoms out. You don't have to look as far as round 24, 25 if you count opening round to see that.
Yes.
which I didn't even do this week.
You got it in, Jesse. You got it in.
34 minutes. But what we're now seeing is the core. The core is shining through. And that core is Nick Larkey, Tristan Cherry, Luke Davies-Uniacke, Harry Sheezel, Colby McKercher. I think that's what you need to be building around. You can even throw a guy like Zohar in there as a second tall if you insist. They look good. I think we've seen real improvement from individuals this year. Guys like Jackson Archer, I think, took a real step forward in season 2024. I think Phillips was significantly better this year. The problem that North Melbourne have is they've just got too many mediocre players. I don't want to go after guys like Jaden Stevens and Darcy Tucker too hard, but they're just one-dimensional footballers. What they will be looking for next year is significant improvement. So if we're talking about North Melbourne in 17 next year, I'll give them a 1. Because at some point you have to actually cash in on the chips you've got. But right now, I'm willing to give North a bit of slack this season because they did have key outs. I think losing Griffin Logue all season is a big blow, given they've really invested in him being their guy defensively. I think he's going to be really important for them. What they have now, though, is a good midfield. Full preseason in Cheezel, full preseason in McKercher, full preseason in LDU, who is being talked about as a bit of a smoky for a top 20 Brownlow finish this season, LDU. I think that group of 3 with the All-Australian ruckman of my heart, Tristan Cherry, can start to be a really impactful midfield for North Melbourne. And to be quite honest, I think they're going to get someone good this trade period. Or this very I don't know who it's going to be, but they've got the money. They've got now some actual marketable young talent. They've got a coach that is very well respected as a tactician. I think they're going to get someone.
I think looking at the young players they've got, the list they've got, not including the core that you were talking about, but a lot of those other players are going to see the fact that they're playing in a young and exciting team, and they're going to want to come along for that ride. A lot of the other teams might not have that same luxury because you've got some of the superstars in the way, some of that kind of stuff, but they're all kind of coming up and coming through together. So I can see like a legend of the game, someone who's been around for 6-7 years, going, I can give something to that. Maybe I'm not like the player I used to be, but I can give guidance. I can still go out there and still do the job. It'd be very interesting to see. Very interesting to see. It's an exciting time for the Kangas.
Hi, Liam. Can I nominate someone for that role?
Is it Christian Petracca?
No. Although that would be a great game.
Who?
No, I was hoping to booby trap North Melbourne with an aging, falling apart Nat Fyfe, but I don't think Clarko's silly enough to fall for that. I may try it, though, on our crosstown rivals West Coast, who we're going to talk about next. They finished in 16th place.
Wait a second. I haven't even done my score yet, mate.
Oh, I did my segue. No one cares what you have to say. Let me do West Coast.
Honestly, probably true.
No, that's not fair. What do you have to say about it? I'm sorry, that was quite nasty.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's actually quite funny because the notes that I've written and the score that I've given is literally pretty much a carbon copy of everything you've just said. So it's kind of like
that's good for you. That means you're on the right wavelength. I hope.
Huzzah! Yeah, I gave him 3 as well. Yeah, it's just those like they could show what they could do. The Collingwood and the Port Adelaide ones are going to hurt, but hey, we move on. We can move on to the Eagles now. That's fine. You did a very good job with North Melbourne. Well done.
Thank you. West Coast, 5 wins, 18 losses, 20 premiership points in total. Liam, who has left the club?
Andrew Gaff. He has retired. I haven't seen any delistings or anything as yet, unless something came through today. And potential outs. You got potential outs. Tom Barrass, who has expressed his interest to head to the Golden Brown. So that's it, Jesse. I'll quickly do mine first for this one. I'll quickly do mine first. Forget me again. I'm joking. Okay, so I've actually given West Coast, even though they finished above North Melbourne, I've actually given them a low score.
Okay.
I've given them 2.5 out of 10. I've split the middle.
Are we doing half points?
Why not? Sure. You can do whatever you want, Jesse. You were making up arbitrary points for your ladder a second ago. Why
hey, my 4/5 of a point were justified.
Exactly. So why are the rules now? We can do whatever we want. It's our podcast.
That's true.
So there was something about the Eagles this year that knocked it down half a point. And truth be told, I actually had them at 3. But then talking about North Melbourne and even talking about Richmond a little bit actually made me knock off that half a point. Because while they had more wins, sure, the games that they didn't turn up for, I don't think I've ever seen a team look less interested to be playing footy than I did the West Coast Eagles this year. There were some games that were absolutely abysmal. And I'm talking like, Cripps is one example. Like one of the games, he was literally just hand up in the air like this, just wasn't any kind of ferocity to it, wasn't anything like that. They had their stars, obviously Waterman and McGovern, 2 All-Australians, which is pretty rare for a team that finishes so low. But obviously they were fantastic. Harley Reid, I don't think he lived up to the hype because I think he was very hard done by with that hype. But he's going to have a lot of, he's very good. I'm not saying he's not good. He's very good. Before you come at me, Eagle supporters, he's very good, very strong, very good at the fend off. But he's got some maturing to do, I think. And I think the media attention really kind of got to him. And you could see it in some of his games as well. But as a team, there was just something, and obviously a year where you get your coach sacked is I think worthy of a deduction as well. So I bloody well did it. But yeah, I think that's all I really got to say about the Eagles. That was the main thing I took away because you can kind of copy paste a fair bit of the stuff from the other 2 teams. It was just that effort. Obviously, they smashed us in one game, which was weird because that's the game that we turned off apparently. But there was that short period of time where they looked like they were going to be doing something. They challenged Sydney. Yeah. They beat us. They were going through. We're like, oh, here they go. They found something here. They're gone. And then all of a sudden, it just fell off a cliff. And yeah, a lot of those players looked like they didn't give a rat's. Jesse, your thoughts?
I went 3. I think for me, when I look at West Coast and I look at 5 wins at the start of the season, I don't think I can go much lower than that in terms of me saying, I think that's reasonable. If we're saying 5 is a pass mark, I still think they've been disappointing. But I don't think I could go much lower than 3, given they did win 5 games this season, including a derby. The good for West Coast, I think clearly they've got their marketable star in Harley Reid. That worked out for them. Hype living up to versus not living up to aside, he lived up to that. He's become the persona that I think West Coast fans needed him to be. He's enthusiastic, he's loud, he makes sure he's seen and heard on a football field, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. He's very much a presence.
It's very bombastic.
I think they had a massive surprise packet in Waterman. They had reliable performances from Jeremy McGovern and Tom Barrass all season. And now we get into the bad. Because unlike North Melbourne, I think West Coast are a year further behind North for a couple of reasons. Dom Sheed is still in the books. Elliot Yeo had a significantly better year, but he has been hampered with injury. Tim Kelly has struggled at times to perform, and looking at it, looks like he struggles with motivation, especially when things aren't going well. Jack Darling, who everyone seemed to think was going to be finishing up at the end of this season, appears to be going around again in 25. Jamie Cripps, who everyone thought would be finishing up based on some pretty ordinary performances this season, looks set to go around in 25 and see out his contract. This is where the tough calls come in. Andrew McQualter, who we talked about before, seems to be the new favourite for that coaching job. If he gets it, I think he's a great coach for it. We saw what he did with Richmond at the back end of 23. I think he's a fantastic coach who deserves his opportunity. But he's then got some really tough calls to make. Does he threaten the stability of his position by going against what some fans would like and dropping Sheed, dropping Darling, dropping those type of players and making a statement? Or does he try to placate the heroes of the club, play them, and risk another dreadful season? Now, we don't know if McCallser will be the coach, and I will throw to you, Liam, in a second. It's not primary school. But for me, there's a real problem with where West Coast are at. And that problem is simply, what is the 3-year plan? They're going to get another high draft pick this year. If they're smart, they'll go for Sid Draper, because he's the one that I'd be wanting. If I was a non-Victorian club with a high draft pick, I'm taking Sid Draper. I think Draper and Reid have the potential as a partnership to be a very good midfield for a very long time. They need to get this draft pick right. Len, what did you want to add?
Well, it was kind of just in relation to that, going against the fans thing that you said about McQualter not playing those players. I know Eagles supporters, and it's a really large sample size of their 110 plus thousand members. The 4 people I know, I don't think they'd have any issue.
You don't get out much, do you?
Huh?
You don't get out much, do you?
I do. No, I do. No, I don't. But I mean, they all seem to be pretty on board with that idea. Like they just want to get the young kids out there and playing. So you never know. There might be a lot. Like if 4 out of 10, it's like 40% of the people.
One more point I want to raise about West Coast is their I'm going to call it the middle market, and that's their kind of, we'll say, 11th through 18th of their best 22. Hunt, disappointing. Not firing. I don't think Chesser's quite taken the steps that he was expected to be making. I think that's a big problem for them. I think Matt Flitter had a tough year with the caveat of an injury disrupting him. You look at Petruccelli. I don't particularly think Petruccelli's that good. If you've got list cloggers or players that aren't fulfilling their roles to the best possible output in that 11th to 18th bracket, it makes it very hard to improve. Fremantle have gone through this on various occasions for the better part of 30 years. It's a really difficult spot to be in, and it's why a detonation like Richmond, or basically everyone's a young player like North, works better than plodding along with players who, while they might be AFL standard, aren't really offering you much. You can put in Witherden in that bracket if you like. I think Tom Cole teeters on that precipice as well at times. They've got ability and they've got quality when things are going right, but when you look at a side that's been beaten year on year on year for 3+ years, who were there for the glory days, or in Jaden Hunt's case, was there for a glory day at Melbourne, you struggle. And you struggle to then instill that forward direction and that mentality in the players. So I just get the sense that West Coast are too powerful of a club to be in this situation for much longer. But I look at this list profile and I worry, because I don't see them charging back up the table with more than 3 of the players I just listed in that middle clump regularly playing. That's a concern for me with them.
So what's your one word? And we're going to go back and do North Melbourne's because we completely forgot to do that. One word for West Coast for the 2025 season.
Rebuild.
Cool. That's, yeah. I had same. That's the word I had, same, because I think that's pretty much where they've been this year as well. Just jumping back to North, your 2025 look ahead word for them.
Critical.
Oh, nice one. I wrote promising. So critical is good, though. I like critical. That's good. All right, let's move on to the last team of our bottom 4 clump that we're going to be discussing today in our review. The Adelaide Crows. Retiring Rory Sloane, potential outs Elliot Himmelberg, potentially. Any other names you know, Jesse, in that little list? That's all I could see online today. So
Matt Keane will leave. He'll go to Collingwood, but that's about it that I'm currently aware of.
So would you like to? Actually, I'm going to start this one, Jesse. I'm going to start this one.
Okay.
But I'm going to start it with a question. We've said this a lot about them being the best 15th place team ever, potentially. Looking back on the year and the scores that we've seen and the performances, were they actually? Because I don't know if, like, looking back and doing some looking into this lovely team, I don't know if they are, if we can still use that phrase for them. But what are your thoughts?
I think we can, because if you look at their points differential, they had a better points differential than Melbourne, who they finished behind, a better points differential than Gold Coast, who they finished behind, a significantly better points differential than Essendon. So they weren't actually dreadful. However, they were bad and they were disappointing. In this case, 2 things can be true. They probably are the greatest 15th place out of all time, but it doesn't mean it was fun to watch for Adelaide supporters.
No. I know one Adelaide supporter. See, I'm expanding my horizons. My networking is going well, and yeah, I wouldn't exactly say they were excited about the the outcome of this year at all. At all. What was your score? What was your score? How'd you score Adelaide this year?
1. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're talking about a team that's meant to be playing top 8 and they're finishing bottom 4, you can't look at it any other way. I don't see a lens you can look at the Adelaide Football Club season and not call it an abject failure. Now, there were complications. I think their best player, Isaac Rankin, had a torrid season through a lot of the time no fault of his own. But simply put, Adelaide failed this year. The Adelaide Football Club, on results, massively underachieved. For a side that missed out in the finals because of a bad umpiring decision 12 months ago, to be finishing 15th and detached from 14th, that's really disappointing. And you can look at them winning 8 games and say, well, that's great, but they also lost 14 of their games as well. So they've almost gone at 1 win, 2 loss. For a side that was legitimately considered a finals contender in 2024, that's poor. And there's no way around that, Liam. In terms of actual qualitative player analysis, I think Rankin had a good year. But really, that's where the list stops. They just had so many underperformers. They're still reliant on Tex Walker. The bright spark for them is that Phil Thorpe and Fogarty had better seasons and improved as the year went on. But that start of the season, I remember that game at Optus, Liam, that Adelaide played here. They were horrible. And they offered nothing.
We were confused watching that game going, wait a minute, what's happening? Like, this is the team that's meant to be climbing this year, and they're giving us absolutely nothing, giving us bupkis.
The good thing about Adelaide is, though, they have a high draft pick, and they do well to take South Australian native Sid Draper with that. But they also have a bit of a unique go-home factor with them. I think they'll end up with Jack Lukosius into 2025.
Nice.
I think Lukosius will be at the Adelaide Football Club next year. And I think they have potential to land a couple of other players as well across the league. You know, these things always fall into place. We may end up seeing a Cosy Pickett at an Adelaide-based club as well in 2025. That's still to be, I think, fully fleshed out. So Adelaide have hope. Adelaide have optimism going into 2024. What I don't think they have, though, is the supporters behind them. And that worries me for Matt Nix's job. Because I think if you look at his performance in 2024 tactically, I think he's in trouble.
Yeah, hard to argue. Hard to argue with that. I didn't quite go as low as 1, but I get what you're saying. Like, based on, like, you know, ladder position, that kind of stuff, I was like, well,
I just don't want to get in a position of comparing apples to oranges when you talk about expectations. I want to compare them all as apples against themselves at the start of the year.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I had him at 3.5, so not much higher than the other two. So not high by any stretch of the imagination, but not a 1. But I understand why you put them there, because for a team that shows they can absolutely play footy, they were so far from the mark so often this year, and it was actually kind of frustrating to watch as a non-Adelaide supporter. Like, it was really frustrating to watch them play and be like, it's there. Like, you can kind of, I don't think any other team you can say it's there. Like, you should be grabbing that.
I can think of one.
Outlets? Nah, I don't think
directions.
I don't think so. There's a reason for that. We'll talk about that when we get to those teams, which at this stage
here comes the excuse-a-thon from you next week.
No excuse-a-thon. Is it, guys, next week? Do we have to do that? Week after.
We can do the rest. The next 6 next week, shan't we?
If that's all we do, then we probably could do that, yes. We probably should, actually. Make sense, because the finals start. Hooray. But yeah, nothing much more to add. I mean, 8 wins. The wins were either convincing or against extremely strong opposition, which is good. Like, you like to see that. But the 14 that they lost, you're like, why? Some of those games, you're like, why are you losing that? Including to us, to be honest with you. Like, at least.
And the Gold Coast game.
And the Gold Coast game.
That actually may sit alone as one of the worst games of football I've watched. And I have watched more than my fair share of stinkers. The fact that I can even remember that to recall it makes me sad because of how bad it was. Now I have to remember the fact that I watched that game. So thanks, Adelaide. You made me sad.
Everyone remember, when you talk to Jesse, he doesn't forget a bloody thing. Please remember that. He might change it to suit his needs, but he won't forget. All right, so let's look at the might true. 2025 look ahead for Adelaide. What's the word?
Troublesome.
I wrote unsure because I really don't know which way they're going to go. Are they going to go down, go up? Unsure. Because
I just don't know if this list has much more progression. You know, and I said this about GWS at the start of the year, so I will be careful to go too far in on this. But like, unless Riley Thilthorpe does do a Jesse Hogan and turn into a Coleman medal winning forward, if they can't add pieces, I'm just not really sure where they sit. Like, they need a healthy Rankin. They need an effective forward. I think defensively they'll be fine, but offensively is where my concerns for Adelaide are going into 2025.
You know what you sound like, Jesse?
What do I sound like?
You sound like you're unsure. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to
That really troubled me that you said that.
Very good. Very good. All right, so that's the first 4 teams. We'll do those today. Next week we'll come back with the other 6 before we go into the finals games, because there's only 4 to cover. Very easy. Very lovely. So, Jesse, what would you like to talk about next to finish us off for today?
I want to talk about how the trade period's basically already started and everyone's so weird and it's only September and everyone wants to leave their clubs already. What has been going on in these last couple of weeks? It's been like extraordinary.
It's not like there's like a, F1 in a couple of years has some rule changes that everyone wants to get ahead of. We don't have that in the AFL. Why is everyone?
There's always something. There's always something coming up.
Yeah,
maybe no one knows it yet, but I reckon I wouldn't go that far to say there's no rule changes coming up.
I was going to say, but when they do a rule change, it's like off the cuff, spur of the moment kind of change anything else. The only thing I can think of is that people are trying to get away and move before Tassie comes into effect and starts ruining chances left, right, and centre. The draft picks aren't there anymore, not as strong because they have the first 20 of them or whatever they get. That's the only thing I can think of, getting right ahead of the curve to break on that. But who's going? Who's put their hand up, Jesse? Have you got a list? We know a few. We've spoken about a few.
Well, all of Richmond, for one.
Yeah.
Everyone from Richmond. We had flirtations of Christian Petrarca and Kozzy Pickett leaving Melbourne. That seems to have settled down a little bit. I sort of think we've maybe with Kozzy. I think Kozzy will probably stay now. I think Petrarca will play for Melbourne in 2025, but I'm just not sure where that relationship is going to be at and how delicate that's going to be for the club to manage, because for that amount of noise, there had to be some agitation from that camp.
Yeah, and for it to leak out and get everywhere, and so everyone knows about it, and all this talk, he's requested trade, he's done this, he's done that, and then he comes out and writes this letter saying, I'm committed to the Demons. It's like, okay, well, 2 things can't be true in this instance. Like, something's got to be happening. Something's got to be happening behind the scenes for this all to be being spoken about at all. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. I think he might stay, but we'll see.
One player that won't be at the Demons next year is Alex Neil-Bullen. He has requested a trade home to South Australia and nominated Adelaide as his club of choice. He may be one that can spur on the Crows, just circling back to our last point. I think he's got potential to join the Crows midfielder and be a bit of a handy player for them.
I think he'd look good in the jersey too, to be honest with you. I think those colours will suit him nicely.
The actual Crow one, I think, would be
yes.
good. I can see him in the Crow.
Although it is a bit of a shame that he's not going to Port, because don't they have like 4 or 5 other people with like 2 last names? That could have been like a bit of a crew of 2 dads just running around.
They've got their fair share.
You go, Jesse. You go.
I was at one player that may be going the other way that only has 1 surname is Dan Houston, who may be looking to head to Victoria for 2025 and beyond. We've heard Essendon, we've heard St Kilda. Have we heard Melbourne as well? I believe we have heard Melbourne linked with Dan Houston as well. So I'm sure there'd be no shortage of clubs lining up for him. But I guess the question is, who needs him the most? And where does he fit? Because St Kilda, you would think, would offer the most money. Melbourne may give him an opportunity to get back into a contending position, potentially. If Melbourne can stop whatever's gone on the last 18 months from happening, I still think there's enough pieces there to make another crack at top 8 at the very least. I think they're pretty dreadful at the moment, but I think there's enough pieces there that you could say it's not unsalvageable. It's not the Titanic. It's not the Lewin after getting smacked into by a container ship at Fremantle Port last week.
So sad. A Freo staple, utterly destroyed. It's a sad day.
Well, another Freo staple is Sam Switkowski, who also has been in the rumour mill in terms of leaving. This would be a cruel blow, I think, for Fremantle fans. But there is that Shy Bolton in the window that we're looking at.
No, but that's a thing, though. Since Switter and Schultz both gave us something that most other players in Freo don't give us, and that's just work ethic and hard at it and go and grit and grunt. A lot of our players don't have that. It's almost like, you speak about Jaylo and you mock him for having the roles of the team, like you just go play your role. That's his role. That's because he's good at it. He just goes out there and he just hunts everything down. And as good as Shy Bolton is, he ain't Sam Switkowski. And it'll be a massive shame to lose him. But 2 years in a row they've been talking about it. So that smoke is getting thicker, unfortunately, it seems. But I hope we keep him. He signed on to 26, 27. So hopefully we keep him. But remains to be seen.
We spoke regarding Tom Barrass earlier. He's also unlikely to depart, heading to Hawthorn, as is Josh Battle from St Kilda to Hawthorn as well. So the Hawks defensively might be almost unpenetrable. And I tell you what, for Coach of the Year Sam Mitchell, who was a very good defensive-minded footballer, I think he's going to enjoy those new toys in the chest to play with down in the back six in season 2025 if he can land both Barrass and Battle. We talked about Lukosius before, but you want to talk a bit more about Hawthorn, do you?
No, I was going to say that Chuck Sicily down forward all the time now. It's great. He's really good down back, but he's pretty good up forward too. That's all.
Not much you can't do. Not much you can't do.
No. Except, don't worry about it. I was going to make a really bad joke. It would have been really silly. Which usually I'm all for, but that one would have been like that level of silly where it's just like, why did you say it? And now I've rambled about it, so I probably should have just said it. Jesse, let's move on.
Jack Lukosius linked with moves to both Victoria and his home state of South Australia. I think he'd be a great get for Port specifically. Uh-huh. He adds that almost co-Darcy Byrne-Jones hybrid role into the team. I think that makes the most sense for me. If I'm either the South Australian sides, if I'm Port, I'm pursuing him quite hard. I'm pursuing him hard if I'm Adelaide too, but I think Port's a better fit for Lukosius, and his blonde hair would fit in really well too.
I was literally
Horn Francis, etc. We'd have 8 of the same player on the field instead of 7. Like one of those old video games from about 2003, where they have 5 character models for the AFL players, and it's just Joe Masiti duplicated every time it's a red-headed player.
You know, it's funny. As soon as you said he might go to Port, my first thought was it's a lot of blonde dudes. So I'm glad you said that. Oh, who else? Who else is going? Who's on the move? Who wants to go away?
Laddams wants out of Sydney, apparently, just with the ruck situation there being second to Grundy. But look, I think that's a pretty good wrap. We haven't heard much about Roy Lobb wanting out of the Dogs since that whole debacle halfway through the season.
Yep. He's found his place now, hasn't he? He's found his place.
He's better down back.
So he's in his Chris Tarrant run.
He is in this Chris Tarrant. God, that was really stupid, wasn't it? remember when we played 60-goal season 4 with Chris Tarrant as a fullback? Yeah, because we didn't have Shane Parker anymore, and the best reaction was, let's put Tarrant there. Superb. Chef's funny. Kiss.
That's it, though. That wraps up the silly season then. But you're right. Like, this is like really silly. Early to be. Yeah, it's silly. It's very silly. Like, I'm trying to think about what it would be. Like, is it just a bargaining chip? Like, they're just trying to bargain to get the best deal for themselves? Like, what could it possibly be getting in this early? Are you even allowed to talk? I mean, obviously you are, but like, I know a lot of sports have like caveats. Like, you can only talk about contracts from a certain period onwards. But I suppose that doesn't exist so much in the AFL, I suppose. Free for all. Do what you like.
I don't mind it either. Nick Dacos to Gold Coast. Why not? We'll throw that in there for a bit of fun. But look, that is the end of the Centimetre Perfect AFL podcast, Liam. Not entirely. That would be really silly if we ended after one episode. But it's the end of this episode.
Well, we'll see if Dennis gets on the phone to us later on going, no, boys, that's mine. You can't take that.
I think it'd be Tom Percy KC rather than Dennis giving us a call.
That's true. Have you guys tried spelling it with ER at the end? That's fine. Just do that.
But see, I'm too like correct English spelling.
Yes,
I refuse. I refuse to appear on a podcast in Australia with an Americanized spelling of a word. So I will not be appearing on Centimeter Perfect if it's spelled incorrectly in Australia. That's all I have to say on the matter.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll just abbreviate it. But you were doing the outro, Jesse, before I so rudely interrupted. Please continue.
Thank you for tuning in to the Centimeter Perfect AFL podcast. Of course, you can catch us on YouTube, on Instagram, and on your preferred podcasting platforms. We look forward to seeing you again for the Just the Tips edition over on YouTube as an exclusive. And more importantly, we look forward to seeing you over the coming months as well with even more fun and engaging AFL content. The rule I have is if I want to watch it, I'll put it out for you. I have some niche interests. Hopefully, you do too. We'll see you soon on the Centimeter Perfect AFL podcast.
Bye, everybody.